Hey everyone. So we're back, this time with a different character build. My original plan when I started making this video series was to do, a general build, which we did in the very beginning, who died very quickly. And then I was going to do a protection smithing character who I thought was going to survive a lot longer than it did, but that was a really weird game. So we'll probably do that one again another time. And then I was going to go do like a stealth stabby based character, which is really hard to play, but it's my favorite kind of character to play. And I'll usually kill about, like 10 or 15 before I get one that really gets a strong run at getting past 500 feet. But once you get that far, the game tends to get pretty easy for me, I guess. But there has been a lot of chatter on a couple of threads about archery-based characters, and I think archery in this game is really strong. More than 90% of monsters in the game have melee attacks instead of ranged, and so that just gives you a huge advantage right off the bat. And so it might be kind of, beginner friendly to do an archery build. So I'm going to show you an archery build that I like to go with a lot. And because we've run through the early game a couple of times already, by which I mean the game that exists before the 100-foot forge, I'm just going to create... I guess what I'll do is I'll show you how to create the build, like how to stack your character in the beginning, or at least the way I like to do it, and then we'll get to the 100-foot forge. I'll show you what I make there, and then I'll probably hit pause or something like this. Maybe I won't even do that. Maybe I'll just show you the build and we'll go straight to the fun part. But before we do that, what am I doing? I'm making a new character. Okay, so I'm going with an archery smithing character. Archery is pretty easy to do without smithing, but I'll talk about that in a second. And if you don't go with smithing, there are a couple of other elf options that you have that would be really good. There's even a Sindar elf that is actually designed for archery. They have archery mastery, and that +2 dexterity is awesome. I don't think any other race except Fëanor has that. Definitely not the dwarves. Yeah. So the reason why I end up going with Fëanor so often is because of the +2 dex. Dexterity is so good in this game. It's kind of hard to live without, and it's just kind of autopilot right now. So these two other elves are pretty good, but and again, if you want to be an archer, these of the Falas elves are pretty amazing too. But let's just stick with what we know, because I'm going to use smithing in this build. And this is kind of the stat allocation I like to go with. I only need a bit of grace for my initial smithing stuff. Constitution I like to have it high because as an archer, I tend to go with a light armor build. I don't go for a lot of protection, and so I want to be able to take a couple of hits before I die. Dexterity is super important for damage and everything else. And then I like to have a bit of strength because your bows tend to float around 2 to 3 pounds naturally, the long bows. 3 pounds is average, I think, so 2 is kind of a stretch, but putting more into strength at this point, this would be a good build too, but let's go with this. We'll do the allocations here. Whatever. And sure. Okay. Oh, this is a neat first room. I got some leather armor right off the bat. But we're not really going to play this character, so I don't care much. So this is the basic build I like to go with. I like to put just as much into archery as I need to get versatility, which I think is 5. Versatility is, in my opinion, kind of overpowered ability in the archery tree that it's a little bit subtle, but the way it works is basically if you divide your archery in half, it'll give you that to melee. That's not really how it works. If you add points to melee, that kind of math changes. It's based on the difference between your archery and your melee score. But I don't put any points in melee when I play an archer at all. So for me, that's basically what it does. So here you got the archery tree, and you see it's pretty shallow. There aren't a lot of abilities here. And there aren't even that many synergistic abilities. When you go with melee, there are a million abilities that you can pick in the melee tree, and then there are a whole bunch of stealth abilities that stack or have something directly to do with melee, assassination only works with a melee attack, cruel blow only works with a melee attack, opportunist only works with a melee attack. And I think same thing with perception, but focused attack works with everything, so that's handy. Actually, maybe all perception. Yeah, I think all perception abilities work with archery. That's good to know. Okay, so we've got versatility, or at least we're going to take it, and it's free because all elves have archery affinities, even the lesser elves, the muggle elves. So I'm going to take versatility. And then we need smithing to make our kit, and with this kit, this particular build, I take enough smithing to get me to 10, which is a lot. That's a heavy investment. And contrary to what most people will expect, because you're not guaranteed to find a bow in this game, like you're just not guaranteed, I guess by some freak probability you could go the whole game without finding one. What some people like to do with this kind of elf, like when you have smithing affinity, you get one free smithing ability for free, right? So a lot of people will take weaponsmith, which only costs 2 points. So for 300 experience, you get a couple of points of smithing and the ability to create weapons, and then you just basically sprint for the 100-foot forge, and you make the bow that you want, and then some arrows, because you can forge up to 24 arrows at a time on a forge. I prefer to just kind of go with luck, because it doesn't really take long to find your first bow, and if I haven't found it in the first couple hundred feet, if the game's not going well for me, I'll just start over. It only takes like 20 minutes, or not even. So I prefer to actually take armorsmith and enchantment, just like we did with the protection build, except instead of protection-based equipment, I like to make stealthy equipment. And then the rest goes into evasion. And I'm comfortable burning all this experience, like I only have a pool of 300, because the items we're going to create with blacksmithing when we get to 100 feet aren't super intensive on the experience scale. So that's the build. 5 points into archery, 3 points into evasion, 6 points into smithing, and this is of course reliant on these stats, because if my grace was higher, I wouldn't need to put as many points into smithing to get this 10. I would need at least 5 to get enchantment, but that extra 6th point actually costs quite a bit, so it might be smart to add a bit of grace here or something, depending on how you play. So now what I can do, I'm not going to actually play this character to the forge, because this is a really boring part of the game, if you've seen it a couple of times. Once you've survived the first couple of floors with any character who has a big investment in smithing, you've kind of figured it out. You just have to make sure the wolves don't surround you, run away from orc soldiers if you don't have armor, and that's basically it. And then when you get to the 100-foot forge, don't just barge in there, try to stealthily creep your way in there a little bit at a time and draw the enemies out. So what I can show you though is if you're not at a forge, but you want to see what you could possibly make, if you hit the 0 key, at least on the Angband style key map, you are in the smithing exploration mode. Now unfortunately, this smithing exploration mode relies on you having the abilities that are required for the stuff. See, like, I wish there was like a god exploration mode where you could just pretend you have all the smithing abilities, and then you can make everything and see what it would take to enchant an item and artifice an item so that you can gauge the score. But right now it's as if you're at a forge, except you're not on one, so I can't actually make anything. But I'm going to show you what I would normally make. So a 3-use forge is good enough for this build, but I always try to gun for 4 use. And actually, my last archer that I was playing that you're going to see in a minute, I got a 3-use and I stuck with it because I think I found a couple of good items that I didn't want to lose. Or I think I was just sick of restarting. That's actually what it was. I got sick of restarting. I found like 3 2-use forges in a row, and then a 3-use, and then quit that character, and then went back and was like, okay, forget it. I'm just going to keep going. I think finding all those forges on the last video really put a damper on my luck. But here's what I like to make. I like to go for a stealth heavy build with my archery characters, because it's just a pain to have things swarming you all the time if you're built up in a lot of armor, and ideally you're not going to have anything close to you ever. Like, that's the ideal situation for an archer. So I feel like stealth works a lot better. The other reason stealth works a lot better is that arrows are considered like a light weapon, like bow and arrow, because a bow has like a damage of 1d something. Like longbows are like 1d9 base, short bows are 1d7 base, I think. And weapons that have like a low number of dice but a high number of sides. So 1d9 is a pretty high number of sides. That's like a really good short sword. Those are considered kind of like light weapons, and what you want to do is hit with a lot of criticals when you hit a monster. And in order to do that, you want their evasion to be as low as possible. So by putting an emphasis on stealth, you'll catch a lot of them unwary or even sleeping, and they get a massive evasion, a massive penalty to evasion, which is great. So enough with talking. What I would make with this character is I'd go for a leather armor of stealth, and with the 10 smithing I have, I can easily make a +2 leather armor of stealth. So that's the first thing I would make. The second thing I would make would be boots of speed, which I always make, you know, like with almost every smithing build, so that I have sprinting. That way you can run away, get a few steps away from a monster, and then shoot it in the face. The third thing I would make, on a 3-use forge at least, if this was like the last thing I was making, I would make a helm of brilliance. And then it's kind of a toss-up as to what my fourth item would be. Oops. Or I guess my third item if this was a 4-use forge. The reason why I would take the Helm of Brilliance last is because it drains your grace, which lowers your smithing, and that's what you don't want. I would probably take a set of leather gloves of archery, and then with 10 smithing, this is why I took 10 smithing, because you can get +2 leather gloves of archery. But if you only had a 3-use forge, I would probably value the Helm of Brilliance over the gloves of archery, because first of all, gloves of archery, they're pretty common. Like I tend to find them a lot in the first 400 feet, and that's something you can make right away if you find another forge. But the other reason why is that archers value distance and light, because you want monsters to be far away enough from you that you can shoot them, but you also need to be able to see them in a dark room if they're far away. So that's why another ability that's really helpful for an archer is Keen Senses, because that lets you see at the periphery of your light radius. And that's something I tend to take pretty early. So the way this game would play is that I'd go to the 100-foot forge, I would make those 4 items that I just mentioned, and then I would basically just keep splunking until, you know, if I got to like 250 feet and I couldn't find a bow and some arrows, I would, you know, maybe restart. It's kind of hard to rejig your character build at this point because it's got a big investment in archery already. And that's that. So, you know, on these cooking shows where somebody makes like this really complicated recipe and they're like, this is going to take 45 minutes in the oven, but it just so happens that I have one in the oven that's been there for 44 minutes. That's sort of the situation we have here. So I'm going to... Oh, I guess I have to quit Sil. I guess I could have just suicided that character and started over again, but... So I do have a shooting-based character who has made it to 250 feet, and I stopped her just before finding her first bow. So I'll show you what has changed. This is kind of jarring to go from 50 feet to 250 feet. But I spent 3,000 turns trying to find my first bow. The only extra point investment that I've made is I put a bit more into evasion because I was trying to survive. And then something you want to do really early, in my opinion, is take a few points of song. 2 is not enough. Like I want a higher song score than this, especially since my grace is drained. But if you have a song score of like 5 or 6, and then you take Elbereth. Elbereth makes like all orcs, trolls, things like that. It makes them kind of run away from you if you've been singing it for a few turns. And so if you do get surrounded, even if you're trying to be quiet and stealthy, once you get surrounded, it's too late to be stealthy. They're going to kill you. And you can't shoot monsters at close range in Sil without allowing them to hit you. It's called provoking an attack of opportunity or something. So if there's a monster right in front of you and you shoot, it'll hit you for free, and then it'll hit you again on its turn. If you're surrounded by 4 monsters and you shoot, all 4 of them will get a free attack. So there is an ability that can kind of mitigate that, but I just don't care about it. So basically, Elbereth helps them kind of get off your back. But there are going to be situations where you need to rely on melee. So now I have a bow. And from this point on, you can see that in terms of equipment, I picked up a whole bunch of arrows. And this may seem like a lot, but it's pretty common to find a whole ton of arrows in the first few floors. Those are the leather boots of speed I made. That's the helm of brilliance I made. That's the armor of stealth that I made. I didn't get a chance to make the gloves of archery because I had a 3-use forge, and I told you I just got sick of restarting. I found an awesome longsword. And I also found another awesome longsword that's a longsword of brilliance that increases my light radius. And I have a lantern with a lot of oil. So light, I'm doing really well for light in this game. I'm actually going to wield the longsword of brilliance even though it's not as good. I have a swap to an actual longsword if I actually need to fight people. So I'll keep that. And I'm just going to drop all this other junk that I don't need. So let's drop the leather armor. Let's drop the dagger. Let's drop these spears. It's interesting to note that spears and daggers, when you throw them, they don't do that attack of opportunity thing. So if you're in melee range of a monster and you throw a dagger at its face, it doesn't get a free attack. Now, throwing sucks, so there's no real benefit in that. It's just a curiosity. So our min depth is 150. I'm at 250. That's pretty comfortable. I'll probably just look for the exit now. Oh, and I have some experience that I want to spend. So at this point, let's just put it into archery. I really like to pump archery with this build because you get a synergistic effect. The more you pump archery, the higher your melee goes. And whether you like it or not, eventually you're going to fight something that's going to get in your face. So when you're stealthy, you remember the last build, I was walking around waking up everything around me. Right now I can kind of dance around the spider and he can't hear me, but he noticed me now, so I'm going to close the door. Oh, can't. Luckily, spiders just ignore you when you disappear from sight. Let's see if I can peg this guy. So you see I already got a double critical. Oh. Ah. I wish I hadn't spent that experience. The next ability I'm going to buy in archery is precision because it helps us get more critical hits. And that's really the best way to do damage with an archer. How the heck did he do that? I hit him and he just danced right around me. I guess he went diagonally. It's like fighting a breakdancer. There's a mulip. It's worth 15 experience, but I friggin' hate those things. I hate it when they erase my memories. And I have no will right now, so. I like archery in this game in terms of how it's controlled. Like a lot of the Angband style games, it's hard to control your archers. Like you have to push 3 keys every time you want to shoot an arrow. Whereas in Sil, you just type FF and you shoot. It's great. I don't know if those orcs saw me. These guys don't look like they have anything in that room that's worth getting. This is probably a scenario where if I get too close to them, I think they'll see me, so I'll use the stealth mode. Oh, not good enough. So the AI of like orc style monsters in this game is kind of beneficial for archers too, because when they're feeling confident, they will do some stupid things, like they'll hover by the door and just keep dancing back and forth at some distance from the door, which lets you just take pot shots at them. Ideally, I wouldn't be fighting with this longsword, but actually having strong light, I just found this out. I think somebody mentioned it on the forums. The bigger your light radius, the more of a penalty that like Morgoth servant style monsters like orcs and trolls, like people that would be his soldiers, the more of a penalty they take. Do I have a shield? No. Shield's a great find for an archer because it's a great find because you never really want to use a two-handed weapon as an archer unless you're in real trouble. Oh, I already went in here. See, this is why I die, because I'm goldfish. And this is just a waste of turns at this point. So I'm going to buy precision now. And then the next great ability to get with archery is Crippling Shot. So if you score a double critical or better, the target's slow for some number of turns. So you can actually, if there's a pack of monsters coming at you, you can just shoot them one at a time and hope you cripple all of them, and then it'll just take them forever to get to you. Okay, let's get out of here. Those are the upstairs. Yeah, let's explore the rest of the floor. And now you can see that monsters with no protection, if you start hitting them from far enough away, they're just helpless. Unfortunately, there won't be too many more of those as we get a bit deeper. I guess you could, oh, I got so much light. But. I'm so used to playing characters that have 0 strength, because I like to do that with my stealth people, that I'm not used to being able to carry extra stuff, so I'm always really hesitant to pick up new torches when I have a lantern, but this character's pretty buff. Alright, so this is an example of a character that, a monster that an archer might have a bit of trouble with if they can't do good criticals, because it has high protection, 44. But if we stealthily sneak up to it, these things are pretty hard to sneak up onto as well. But let's take a shot. Yeah, and that was just, it doesn't matter how high your protection is, if you get enough criticals, eventually you're going to get a really hard hit. So 3d11, and he just got a bad protection roll. And he has no HP, so. Actually, his protection roll isn't even that bad, it's just that he can't take a lot of hits. So now I'm going to eat some, what's this herb? Maybe this herb is, you know what, I have no will. I don't want to just start eating herbs randomly. This is the problem with having a low perception stealth-based character. You have to break down doors, and then everybody hears you. There's some more archers. Oh, he's gone already. And you can see that archers are just... It's usually the case in this game that if you are of a certain build type, an opponent of a similar build type is really hard to deal with. Which is weird, you would think, but like for a stealth character, fighting really stealthy, really fast, like ninja kind of characters, like the cat assassins that you see later, it's really hard. Because they can do everything you do better than you, and your tricks don't work against them. So you can see I'm a better archer than these orc archers, and they just die. For God's sake, this is such a waste of arrows. With those worms, it's usually better just to hit them, because you can hit them and then step back because they're slow. I killed 2 of his buddies and he didn't even notice. It's one of the benefits of being stealthy. Oh great, shovel, that's a very helpful find. Another awesome longsword, although it's too heavy. The reason why I say it's awesome is because it has that extra +1 to hit. That's another thing too, like if there's nothing else in the room, you can save turns by just going to look at the item that you've just seen instead of having to step over it to see how good it is. Little things like that can save you a lot of turns. I'm just going to keep grinding archery until I get to 10 maybe. Just because I find if you neglect basic skills early in the game, it's a real shocker to go to the deeper floors and realize you can't hit anything. Especially with that early investment in smithing. It's experience that could have gone to performance enhancing stats. That's an Easterling warrior. I'm going to take a few steps back just so I get a good bunch of shots at it. And this is a great scenario because he's in a light room, and he has his own light. He's carrying a torch, the poor sucker. So I can shoot him easily, although now he moved out of it. I took too many steps. Is he going to come back? Now he's in a spot where it's like impossible to shoot him. But it doesn't matter. Come on. You know, you want to. I guess I have a reputation. They're a little bit worried. These things are actually a little bit hard for me to fight at this point, because if they get up close, I have to run. This is generally something you don't want to do. You don't want to be running backwards into a space you haven't explored well, because there could be monsters coming out this way. Grab my arrows. Oops. The reason why I always kill these spiders is because they pretty much always hear me. Sneaking past them is not really an option. Ah, damn it. I hate pits, they're so annoying. Oh, you can't disarm pits. Alright, I just gotta jump into it. And I'm sure glad I did that, because there's nothing here. That's like putting a moat outside of your laundry room. Like, who the hell wants to go in there? And that's it for that floor. Let's go do one more and then we'll call it a day. Or maybe we'll just die. You never know. Oh, there's nobody left alive here. This is the torchiest dungeon I've ever seen. I should probably have a tiny bit more song, because if I need to use Elbereth right now, wow. Oh. Or captains always have like a kabillion orcs around them. Not always, but, well, I think always, actually. This is not really a spot I want to fight all these guys from. Luckily, man, are they stupid. That's a situation where if you just go in with guns blazing, oh, that's a really good great helm. 1d4. If you just go in with guns blazing, you can get yourself surrounded and killed. And I don't want to deal with fighting that many guys right now. Although if this orc thief shouts, they're all gonna... Sweet. That's a lot of orc warriors. I'm gonna run for that other hall before they surround me, because I'm worried there's gonna be a whole stack of orcs coming after me in a sec. And I found this great Spear of Orc Slaying along my way. I might just use this to encourage them to run away. That way I can shoot at them. That's another trick. Orc Slaying weapons at this stage in the game are just incredible. It's like a little Elbereth, except you stab them with it. Except I just have to remember not to keep wielding it. And another trick, because I'm swapping these weapons so much, the longsword is probably what I'll want to swap to the most. I'm going to inscribe my longsword with the at W0. And I'm going to inscribe my longsword of brilliance with an at W0. And that way, all I have to type in is wield and 0, and it'll pick it out of my inventory, no matter what letter it has. See, I just did it now. Although you don't really want to swap weapons like that when there's a monster in front of you. Damn it. Frickin' spiders. Sure. Oh, now he's gonna chase me. Oh, these are real arrows, cool. So far, so good. These things are so annoying. I'm going to switch to a Bastard Sword and take off my shield, just because I get big damage dice this way, and it's just easier to hit this thing. Try to remember what monsters that you fought before have high speed, because they're the ones that are really going to give you problems as an archer. They could just rush you down. I think that's it. No, there's a bit more. So I wonder if this whole posse is still sitting here. They sure are. So I suspect now that there aren't many other monsters on the level. So I'm probably just going to wake these guys up. This is not the wisest thing to do, but there isn't another staircase on this floor unless there's one behind a secret door. So I don't think there's any way for like wandering monsters to be generated on this side of the dungeon. So the gist of that is I don't think I can be trapped. Now ideally I'd like to get a shot off at that orc captain. But he's well protected in that little nook of his, so I'm just going to shoot this guy. Oh, I just straight out killed him. Are any of these guys awake? He's sleeping, he's unwary, he's sleeping. Okay, so I just assassinated that one. I'm going to target that guy. He wakes up, but he hasn't noticed. Has anybody noticed me? The thief? Well, the guy shot, clearly. Alright, I'm going to take one more shot and then run. And now it's a party. So even if the bad guys are in the dark, you can still shoot at them. You just have to use a directional key. So don't be afraid to do it. Because you will get a lot of hits off. I think, like, even if you have a penalty to hit them, because you can't see them, I think they have a penalty as well because they can't see where you're shooting from. So now I have to start thinking, like, I shouldn't have just been running backwards. Because these orcs are smart enough that if I start going down this way, they might try to flank me this way. Like, split up their forces or whatever. Ah, that centipede. It's come back to heckle me. Look at that. You leave one enemy alive and could be the last mistake you make. You notice I got 2 shots there because I was at the end of my sprint, and when you're fast, you can one-up the monster sometimes. The only reason I took a swing at that thing is because I thought it might flee if I got its HP down a bit, and then when they start fleeing, you can shoot them in the back. It's all fun and games. Sweet. I'm just going to lug this lantern around so that when I've burnt enough oil and it's efficient to use it, I can use it. Oh, what am I doing? Sometimes I forget I'm an archer. It's actually really helpful to be able to shoot thieves because it's pretty easy for them to take all your stuff and then run for stairs, which I find incredibly annoying. What's that? That was a route. Oh yeah, sorry. I just killed this innocent spider in my bloodlust, but they've killed a lot of my predecessors, so I don't feel so bad. And that's it for this floor. So oh wait, let's see if there's anything cool up here. Shadow mold. And you can see I have so much light that it's just, I can see it pretty easily. These gore crows, don't screw around with these. If they blind you, they're fast, and they hit pretty hard if you have no... I think when you're blind you have like an evasion penalty, clearly. And so they're no joke if they start hitting you. I have so many arrows that I might just try to pump this guy full of arrows. When you have a high archery skill, pumping these things full of arrows kills them pretty quick because you get... I don't think you can critical them, but you just do decent damage. I got some experience for that. And now we're done this floor. So you see, with just a bit of positional strategy and just playing a little bit slowly, an archer can do pretty well in the early game because there are fewer threats from chance, basically. Like every time a monster gets up close to you and takes a swing at you, you're taking a chance. Even if you have high protection and they have low melee, there's always a chance that they can get a critical and you get a crappy protection roll and you just get really badly hurt. So this kind of mitigates the probability of being killed in the early game by allowing you to keep your distance. Later in the dungeon, you'll see things start to get darker, like there aren't as many rooms that are well lit like this. And so unless you have your own powerful sources of light, it's not quite as easy to see where things are coming from, and you have to take more blind shots. That's where stabs of light actually can fill a room. It's like an IKEA lamp and a staff, basically, for a few turns. So it's one of those things aren't super useful when you're like a melee fighter, but as an archer, they come in really handy. But on this floor is where we have the potential to start meeting my favorite enemy in the game, which is wargs, which you saw kind of directly led to my frustration, which indirectly led to my death in the last set of videos. And wargs are just as hard for archers as they are for these other people, because they're really hard to hit, and they run fast. And they make a lot of noise, so they call the whole dungeon on your butt. So Ken, our little fair archer named Arrow, survived the warg horde. This is actually a part in the game where, with certain types of characters, I might try it with this character. If you know that you have a hard time with wargs, and you know that they mostly show up on 400 to 500 feet, it might just be worth it to dive and just skip these two floors. You might run into some monsters that you're too weak to handle on the bottom floors, but in general, as you go deeper in the dungeon, there are fewer and fewer giant packs of monsters, and there tend to be small clumps of really strong monsters. And an archer, will they have more trouble with that? Will they have less? I don't know. As a stealth-based character, it's better to have fewer people looking at you. But anyhow, this is all theory crafting at this point. I'm probably just going to spend a lot of time on this video talking out of my butt and then die in the next one. But for now, I'm just going to call it, and we'll continue with this archery build next time. Look at that, we made it to 400 feet in one video with a bit of shenanigans, but our pacing is getting better. 40% of the game, and I don't know, like what was that, half an hour? So I hope you guys had fun, and I'll see you next time.